The clock on the wall reads 3:14 a.m. The numbers glow in the dark, a steady rhythmic pulse of light that marks the passing of another minute he cannot reclaim. Mark lies perfectly still, staring at the ceiling, yet his body is screaming for movement. His pulse thumps against his ribs, a rapid, uneven beat that echoes the frantic rhythm of his own thoughts. 6 hours have passed since he sent that email, but the words remain burned into his mind, replaying on a loop he cannot switch off. Every sentence he typed feels like a mistake. Every choice of word feels like a bridge he has burned. The apartment is silent, but the silence is heavy, pressing down on him like a physical weight. He shifts his weight, the sheets rustling loudly in the stagnant air. He tries to slow his breathing, but his lungs feel tight, constricted by the sheer gravity of his own worry. He is trapped in the dark. The room offers no comfort, only the cold, unblinking stare of the clock and the persistent, nagging memory of a digital message. The stillness of the room became an enemy. Mark twisted, the fabric of the sheets tangling around his legs like a net. He gripped the edge of his pillow, his knuckles turning white, and drove his fist into the center of it. The impact did nothing to settle the storm in his head. He sat up, the sudden movement leaving him dizzy, his eyes immediately drawn to the desk in the corner. The laptop screen was a jagged rectangle of blue light in the pitch-black room. It was a beacon of his own making, a glowing reminder of the project he had spent weeks building and hours dismantling in his mind. He stared at the open tab, the lines of code and text blurring into a chaotic mess that seemed to mock his every effort. The screen hummed with a low, electric buzz that felt louder than his own heartbeat. Every pixel was a testament to his perceived incompetence. The light washed over his face, cold and clinical, highlighting the sharp lines of his jaw and the tension in his neck. He pushed away from the desk, the chair legs scraping harshly against the floorboards. The sound was too loud, a sharp intrusion into the quiet of the apartment. Mark stood, his legs feeling stiff, and walked toward the narrow hallway. The space was tight, barely wide enough for his shoulders to pass without brushing the walls. He paced the length of it. 3 steps forward, a sharp pivot, 3 steps back. His palms were slick with sweat, and he wiped them repeatedly against his thighs, but the moisture returned instantly. Every time he turned at the end of the hall, he glanced back toward the bedroom, toward the blue glow of the laptop that still waited for him. He tried to focus on his breathing, but his lungs felt like they were shrinking, pulling in less air with every stride. He walked faster. The rhythm of his footsteps on the hardwood became a frantic drumbeat, matching the erratic thrumming in his temples. He felt like an animal in a cage, circling the same few feet of floor, searching for an exit that did not exist. The walls seemed to draw closer with each pass, the shadows stretching and contracting as he moved. He was trapped in the physical manifestation of his own spiraling thoughts, unable to stop, unable to rest, and unable to find a single moment of stillness in the dark. Mark stopped mid-stride, his breath hitching as he pulled his phone from his pocket. The screen flared to life, casting a harsh, artificial glare against his eyes. His thumbs hovered over the glass, trembling. He began to type, the letters appearing in a frantic, jagged stream. "I am sorry," he started, then stopped. He deleted it. He typed again, "The project is not what I intended," and stared at the words until they seemed to lose their meaning. He hit the backspace key, watching the characters vanish one by one. He tried a third time, his pulse hammering against his throat. "Please, give me a chance to fix the errors." His finger hovered over the send button, but his heart seized. The chest tightness arrived like a physical weight, a crushing pressure that made it difficult to draw a full breath. He deleted the message again. The screen blinked, waiting for input, mocking his paralysis. He typed the same apology, then wiped it clean, his movements becoming more aggressive, more desperate. The phone felt slippery in his sweating grip, a cold, heavy slab of glass and metal that offered no solution. He stared at the blank cursor, his typing now erratic. The phone slipped from his fingers, landing soundlessly on the rug. Mark walked into the kitchen, his movements heavy and uncoordinated. He reached for a glass, his grip clumsy, and held it under the faucet. The water surged, cold and sharp, splashing against the sides of the glass as he struggled to keep his hands steady. It was no use. The glass rattled against the metal rim of the sink, a rhythmic, metallic clicking that echoed in the empty room. He turned the handle, shutting off the flow, and stood there, chest heaving. His hand continued to tremble, the water inside the glass sloshing in frantic, uneven waves. He set the glass down on the counter, the sound far too loud. He turned toward the window. Outside, the night was a wall of absolute black. He leaned in, pressing his palms against the cool, smooth surface of the frame. His own reflection stared back, a ghost in the dark glass, distorted by the lack of light. He looked at his eyes, his skin, the lines of his jaw, trying to recognize the person looking back. The silence of the kitchen pressed in on him. He was at the edge of his endurance. The kitchen remained still. Mark opened his mouth, but the air caught in his throat. He cleared his lungs, his voice raspy and thin as it cut through the stagnant air. Will this matter in 10 years? No, the question hung in the room, stripped of its usual urgency. He waited for an answer. The refrigerator hummed, a low, mechanical drone that offered no comfort. He stared harder at his reflection, forcing his mind to jump forward. He tried to summon the image of the project, the email, the boss, the late-night panic. He reached for the details, but they slipped like sand through his fingers. He could not find the shape of his current fear in the landscape of a decade. The memory of the email began to blur, turning into a gray, featureless smudge. He tried to picture the specific words that had caused his pulse to race, but they were gone, replaced by the vast, empty space of time. The silence in the room shifted. It was no longer a suffocating weight, but a clean, empty slate. He blinked, his eyes stinging from the harsh light of the window. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow, leaving him standing in the dark. Mark remained motionless, his palms still pressed against the cold glass. He shifted his focus from the window to the pressure behind his ribs. For hours, it had felt like a crushing weight, a mountain of iron that made every breath a labor. He took a slow, deliberate inhale. The air moved into his lungs without the usual resistance. He traced the sensation of the tightness with his fingertips, pressing into his own collarbone. The pressure was not a mountain. It was a pebble, a small, smooth, insignificant stone he had been carrying in his fist for no reason. He opened his hand, palm flat against the glass, and watched his fingers relax. The frantic rhythm of his heart slowed, dropping from a rapid, erratic thrum to a steady, rhythmic beat. He felt the muscles in his shoulders drop, the tension that had been locked there for hours finally uncoiling. He looked at his reflection again. The lines of strain around his mouth had softened. The ghost in the glass was no longer a man trapped by a clock, but a man standing in a quiet room at 3 a.m. He pushed away from the window, his movements fluid and unhurried. The weight was gone, leaving behind only the cool air of the kitchen and the steady, rhythmic ticking. Mark walked out of the kitchen, his footsteps landing softly on the floorboards. He entered the bedroom, where the laptop sat on the desk. Its screen still glowed, casting a harsh, artificial blue light across the wall. He approached the desk, his hand reaching out to the edge of the lid. He did not hesitate. He pushed the screen down, the hinge clicking shut with a final, muted sound. The room instantly lost its primary light source, leaving only the faint gray glow of the streetlights filtering through the window. He moved toward the window, his hand gripping the heavy fabric of the curtains. He pulled them along the rod, the rings sliding with a rhythmic, metallic scrape. The fabric blocked the streetlights, sealing the room in a thick, velvet blackness. He stood in the center of the dark space for a moment, listening to the silence. The air felt cooler now, stripped of the frantic energy. He reached out, his fingers brushing the wall to steady himself. and turned away from the desk. The laptop was now just a cold, dark object on the wood. Mark moved to the edge of the bed. He sat down, the mattress sinking slightly under his weight. He swung his legs up, the sheets cool against his skin. He lay back, his head sinking into the pillow, and stared into the dark ceiling. He focused on the steady rise and fall of his chest. Each breath was deeper than the last, pulling the remaining tension from his shoulders and neck. He watched the shadows in the room, letting his eyes grow heavy. The silence was no longer a void, but a foundation. He thought about the project, the email, and the clock that had dictated his hours. They were distant now, like echoes in a tunnel. He realized that the urgency he felt was a product of the moment, not a permanent state of his life. He shifted his weight, finding a position that allowed his muscles to slacken completely. He closed his eyes. The room was still, the air undisturbed. He understood that the weight he had carried was a choice, and he chose to set it down. He let his breathing slow until it matched the quiet rhythm of the house. He remained still, anchored in the present, knowing that the problems which seemed like mountains were only temporary shadows. He was finally, completely at rest.